I think it's time we can start. We're on the Job part of the Handbook of Wisdom and Books. We're on the Job part of the Handbook of Wisdom, Books, and Psalms. This is part 2. I'm following up on what Jane did last Sunday. And so here we go. I don't know how many of you had a chance to get all the way through Job. And so I'm basically wondering if there are verses or quotes that you agree with. And I'm also going to ask you if there are some that you disagree with. And if there are some quotes or verses that upset you. And if you don't have an answer, that's okay. But I thought I'd at least start out that way.
Well, it was really easy to find the one that upset me, and I disagreed with.
Which is?
Verse. I looked it up again just to make sure. It's chapter 2, verses 4 through 6.
Okay. Would you like to read them to us?
So basically, this is the second time. I'm going to call him Satan because that's what our scholars call him. Satan comes back to God after Job passes the first test, where basically everybody in his life dies, and he says, "Well, skin for skin," Satan replied. "A man will give all he has for his own life, but now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." That upsets me.
Where he had to spare his life?
Oh.
You don't like the idea of Satan having us in his hands?
Yeah. Well, the God did it willingly.
Okay.
That's what always has bothered me about Job, is that there was some sort of a bet between them.
Okay.
Now, I'm changing my mind a little bit reading this book, I will have to say. But you asked.
And how are you changing your mind?
Well, if it is a parable, if it is written by a righteous man who is seeing all the suffering in life and he's trying to figure it out, then perhaps God is saying, I can't control everything. Now, I do disagree. Last week, the author had said that he doesn't agree with the scholars that say that God is diminished. But I don't think that means he's diminished. I just say that God has decided not to have total control. That doesn't mean diminished to me, but some people think it does. So
I learned this week about theodicy, and one of them is process theodicy, which also goes along with process theology, where God,
I don't even know the word.
It means you're justifying God's right. I know, I had to look it up too. Righteousness and good, in contrast, more or less, with evil and suffering in the world.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, according to process theology and theodicy,
okay,
God does not have coercive power, or he does not use coercive power. His power is unlimited, but it is persuasive only.
That's
interesting. Okay.
I don't know whether God came that way. I mean, he was already there. If he was always that way, or if he purposely gave up his all-powerfulness.
Ah, okay, all right.
Well,
It's a new term.
It was a different historical time when people had a different view of God and God's interaction with these other heavenly creatures, beings, spirits, whatever Satan was.
Okay.
Augustine and Luther and Calvin basically believed God was all-knowing, and he may not have affected the outcome, but he always knew what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay. Anyone else have quotes that bothered you, you liked? disturbed you. You lost sleep over.
Mine's pretty much the same one Jane did. It's always bothered me.
And remember, I quoted the second one. It's like, it wasn't enough that he killed all of his people,
Yeah.
Then he had to put boils on his body, it's like.
Sort of like Passover when you enumerate the all the afflictions.
And our author said, as I read a little bit more into this chapter, that that's kind of what Psalms are all about too, when you think about it. Half of the Psalms, not half, we're going to talk about 10 different types of Psalms. Right. But you got these wonderful, beautiful praise Psalms. And then you've got some where they're just mad, The psalmist is really mad at God. And I've always liked that. And perhaps that's what Job is referring to, So this is Job kind of being a psalmist.
Over the back row, any comments?
It kind of lets God off the hook for people that have bad things happen to them.
Yeah.
Because if you think that God causes everything and is responsible for everything, then it's hard to understand why he lets bad things happen to you. But if he, is using this as a way to teach a lesson, then it's a little easier to forgive God.
Well, yeah, the view of the day is if you got ill, if you all these bad things happen to you, then you were in the wrong. You must have done something to anger God.
Right. That was the traditional wisdom, the Mosaic wisdom.
Well, and even some of the oldies from early Christianity kind of felt that way too. And I think there are still some people who feel that that's what happens.
Yeah, I think you're right. Any favorite quotes that you love? You're ready to put up on your wall?
Do you have one?
I'm asking you.
That sounded like a
Well, we'll move right along. couple of concepts we need to understand before we go much further. What is practical wisdom theology? Can I give you a hint and say Proverbs?
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't it? That's what Proverbs is like. It's basically it's deductive reasoning in my world. It's like if you do this, then this will happen. If you do this, then this will happen. That's practical wisdom.
Okay. Practical wisdom theology is it basically centers on the fear of the Lord. Do certain things because if you don't, it's going to be a problem. Which ties in with retribution theology that the author talks about. What is retribution theology?
The wrath of
the wrath of God.
The punishment.
I like this definition. It's a little long, but basically the idea that you get what you deserve. That God sees to it that the good people prosper, bad things happen too. God punishes people in this world in direct response to their actions. Retribution theology says, for example, if you get cancer, this is a sign that God is punishing you something bad for something bad you've done. And if you prosper, if your business prospers, then obviously you pleased God. Reactions to that?
Well, some of the people that prosper, I can't see how they might please God when some of them are dictators and oppressors.
Yeah.
I think in that case, it's more taking the prosperity than earning.
Yeah, but God still isn't punishing them. It doesn't seem to be.
What about this idea that
Yes.
Yeah.
overly simplistic? Okay. Well, just keep that in the back of your mind, because much of what the three friends of Job talk about, their theology is retribution theology. They can't believe that Job has not done something wrong. God is punishing them. So we ask about a favorite verse. Here's my favorite verse.
Okay.
One of many, but it gets me thinking. Think how you have instructed many. This is being said to Job. How you have strengthened feeble hands. Your words have supported those who stumbled, but you have strengthened faltering knees. You've done all these things, supported so many people, but now trouble comes to you, and you are discouraged. It strikes you, and you are dismayed. Why do you think I like that?
It's encouraging. It's his friend encouraging.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, buck up.
Yeah. Eli
Listen
Fuzz
to your own.
is doing that. He's encouraging him, or trying to encourage him. What else does it say to you, though?
I feel like there's a big but coming.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say.
There's going to be a backhanded like, but you screwed up something.
There is.
Yeah.
I know, and are you gonna finish the
It seems
verse?
like Eliphaz doesn't really have insight into the magnitude of Job's suffering. If you look at all of the things that were done to Job, it's not just trouble comes to you and you're discouraged. You had a flat tire on the way to work and you're discouraged.
Yeah.
I don't think Eliphaz gets it.
I know, he has more children.
Yeah.
Well, there's another angle to it, and the other angle is it reminds me personally that I preach a lot about faith and belief in God. It's all powerful, but I need to also remember you don't curse him when things go wrong, that there are other reasons why things go wrong. So it's kind of a reminder to me that, like Job, just because things go bad doesn't mean it's time to curse God or to lose your faith in him.
Since you mentioned that, I was trying to find my favorite verse, and if I can back up.
Sure.
Job 19, after he lists in great detail everything that's happened to him, and that takes about 25 verses. And he said, and after my skin has been destroyed, let's see, that's not the one. Okay, I'm back up one verse. I know that my Redeemer lives, so in spite of all of this, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. And I myself will see him with my own eyes, I and not another. How my heart yearns within me. That's my favorite.
It has a feel of the Messiah in it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think yeah, it does. I mean, my Redeemer lives, certainly. Again, we've exported that language into Christianity a lot.
Yeah, I was talking Messiah, I mean, oratory.
Yeah, but he says, I will see God in my
Yeah.
flesh. So I know, I mean, he's talking about God, so
Yes.
he's talking about God in the Christian sense that we would say Jesus is God. From the last book.
Right, right. Okay, well, here we go. We're going to go verse by verse, sort of. Can you all read that okay?
I can turn the lights down a little more if you want.
Sure, why don't you? Because I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to read these through. I'm going to let you read them silently, but I want you to know what in there sticks out, what says something to you. I think that's about as
eyes because I know it's perfect. But like it could be focused just a little bit.
I'm all for focus.
That's better.
Yeah, good. Okay, so let me just ask, basically, what do you know about Job from the verses up on the screen?
He was a prosperous, and he would have been considered a righteous man.
Okay,
He's not a Hebrew.
okay,
Or is,
Hmm?
or is,
I don't know that we.
Yeah, our author said it was somewhere in
Edom.
Mesopotamia.
Asia. What?
Isn't it Edom?
Edom.
Edom,
That's it.
yeah.
That's right.
But I think that the names are not Hebrew names in the story. They're from some other country.
Which is kind of interesting that this book ends up in the Hebrew Bible and it talks about the greatest man among the people of the, and he's not Hebrew, he's not Israeli, he's an Easterner.
I wonder if that lends strength to the argument that Job was not written, may have been written during the Babylonian captivity where there was a lot of intermingling other cultures and other stories.
And of course, today we like to think in terms that if the story applies to people all over the world, because this man is not Hebrew, he's from the East.
well, the book of Ruth. That's something.
Yeah.
What stands out to me in these verses is that he was not only conscious of his own life, but he would kind of be taking care of his family. That part where he said early in the morning he would sacrifice a bird's offering just in case his children had sinned and cursed God in their hearts.
Yeah.
So
He seems to not have total confidence in his children and how sinless
I
they
kind of like a father who does that.
You know these teenagers.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it's also interesting
Just in
that
case.
the sons would celebrate the birthdays and they would actually invite their sisters. Now, somehow that seems normal. But a point is made of the fact that they would invite their sisters to eat and drink with them.
Yeah, I guess they were supposed to. Back.
But you make a good point that it ends by saying this is Job's regular custom. So he offers sacrifices for his family, and again, proof of supposedly a very righteous man. So let's move on to the second group of words. What drives you about that? What do you see there?
God is all-knowing. God would know where they came from, but apparently doesn't. So it's again a different historical view of God. Well, this may be a rhetorical question.
Okay.
But they answer it.
Yeah. So Satan or Satan is roaming back and forth across the face of the earth. And what do we know about Satan or Satan? I'm going to use both terms.
Okay.
Well, in the Jewish tradition, he wasn't necessarily the devil or evil, but he was the
adversary, the accuser. Yeah. Okay. And what else do we know about it? What does Satan remind you of in this particular passage?
Somebody who's jealous.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this specifically. Do you have any current contemporary position that wanders back and forth looking for people who break the law?
Well, Well, I read something like that. It made me think of the inquisitors who are trying to determine if people are genuine in their faith. And that's what Satan said he wanted to do, is to prove to God that Job was not genuine, okay, that he would falter. In modern day, we have countries that have governments that are largely driven by religions. So you have religious police who, again, are out looking for people who are not following the religious laws of that.
Right. And even in our country, there are sometimes police officers who are looking for people who are making traffic violations and all. They may not be tempting them.
Also reporters. I'm always having for
Maybe that's
bad stories.
reporter going back.
Sell the papers.
Pardon?
Bounty hunter.
Bounty hunter. Okay, so Satan or Satan is a little bit of both of those. Paul mentioned this, but I thought I'd share the definition, the difference between Jewish belief and the Christian belief. In the Jewish belief, Satan is an angel commanded by God to tempt humans to sin, to accuse the sinners and carry out God's punishment.
That seems kind of, oh, God.
Yep. And yet in the Christian belief, Satan is a rebellious angel who is the adversary of God, Lord of evil. But there's a shade of difference between them. More than shade. But keep in mind, we're reading out of the Hebrew Bible. So the Jewish belief would prevail in this case. Comments? Before we go further? So here, Satan is in the throne room, and he says, "But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord says, this is Jane's least favorite. Yeah, the first time. And by the way, if you probably have realized already, there are 2 times that Satan goes to the throne room, talks to God, and wants it evil on Job. And then there are 3 cycles, debates, 3 friends, 3 cycles of debates before you get to the young man at the very end, who of course knows all the answers and is telling Job where he's made mistakes. Any comments on what you see up there now?
Very anthropomorphic.
That's true. That's true. And throughout this, God takes on the sense of a human, the attributes of a human.
I even thought on that verse before that God sounds prideful. I mean, I think that's what one of the scholars, says that it's basically this debate between these two, because Satan is saying to God, well, you're only proud of him because you want to be worshipped, and he's only good to you. He only worships you because he wants a good life, and so that's that big accusation that comes up.
Well, and it's also interesting. Again, we have to differentiate between what the author is writing and what God is really like. But it's interesting that the first stone is cast by God, saying, "Have you considered my servant Job?"
Yeah,
And Satan says, "Well, yes, I have."
I know.
And then the fact that God identifies the admirable quality about Job is that he fears God. And we don't think in those terms about God much anymore. Fearing God is not, well, some Christians do. I think in some Christian areas they probably would say that fearing God is a good thing, but it's not something talked about in this church.
But it goes back to that wisdom theology or that retribution theology, where the essence of it is a fear of God. So here we go with the first assault. What do you notice in this? Anything that grabs your attention? What goes first?
Sam,
Animals, donkeys. Anything else speak to it, you and that?
But only one person escaped.
Yeah.
To go back and tell Joe.
in both cases.
Yeah, both cases. And in one case, it's a human attack. Sabaeans. The other, it's basically fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the serpents. So you can't escape. You're getting it from the sky. You're getting it from
God or the fire of the devil.
yeah. And then it says, while he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters, once he has been offering burnt offerings for, they have died from a mighty wind. That's the third scroll it's referring to. And what's Jeff's response?
Well, he did that traditional, Jewish mourning where he tears his clothes and shaves his head. And he fell to the ground and worshiped.
So I have to ask you, your car breaks into, burns up, your house burns down. You find out that your children have all perished, all in a short period of time.
Dog gets hit by lightning.
Dog gets hit by lightning.
Oh, that's it. That's the straw. I'm cursing God. That's it.
And so you're going to
He bends the
say,
nerves.
naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised.
Like, obviously you're coming after me next, let's go.
Well, that's not really working through the steps of grief that we kind of know now. That's like, does this guy have any compassion? And I mean, they kind of make it out that he does. He loved his children, and he was a good friend to people. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, that would be hard to do.
Kind of a Pollyanna.
Yeah, it's a little simplistic.
It's such resignation, the Lord giveth and taketh away. It's like,
Are you a puppet?
I mean, I do get that when you're going through grief, there has to be some sort of acceptance stage.
Right.
But that's usually the last day.
I was gonna say, but
Right now,
That's not the first thing.
I think he goes there
Yeah.
fast,
Yeah, how did he get to that fast?
I think right now he's in shock and he's just trying to deal with it the best way he can.
And he refuses to accuse God. I mean, that's the whole point of the
Yeah.
story, obviously.
I mean, his first thought is, okay, well, I've taken everything to God in the past and might as well do that now.
Yeah,
And then
I
once
think
he can deal with it, then he can deal with it. But he's
Yeah.
just like, God, you're here. I mean, you are who I go to. So.
Yeah, okay.
well, I combine the comments about stages of grief with April's comment about shock.
Yeah.
And people go through grief in different stages, in different order. It's not always neat and clean. And I suggest that Job is in shock. He doesn't know how to react. He reacts instinctively with the way in which he's been brought up, and that is praise. I think that what he's given me, he's taken away. Praise be God. Anybody disagree?
You're carrying Ryan and his, people, yes.
Oh.
We like that.
Yeah,
They're
That's
coming to
correct.
the next one.
Okay. Moving on, unless there are other comments.
In the way that they believed in God and gods in that time, since Job was not, he was probably living in a country where there were other gods that were accepted, but they believed that the reward and the punishment came for good and evil, and perhaps when you get punished, the purpose of the punishment is to bring you back to a sense of being good again.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I see the pattern in this story that everything that can possibly happen to Job has happened to Job, and his response is what people in those days would have said we had to do is, the gods are punishing us, the gods must want us to be back in line again, and that's what he does.
but he never accepts that he did anything wrong.
Yeah.
But, he just, I mean, he's very confused and angry. I mean, I do like that humanness of Job.
Yeah.
But I agree with Paul that he just says, well, this is what God is doing.
Is he so proud of being a righteous man that pride is the sin?
I can see somebody being angry and not, I mean, it says that Job praised God, and that's the confusing part of this. I mean, the human response would be to tear off all your clothes and say, here I am, come and get me. If you want me now, you've taken everything else. Kind of like in the movies, I guess. But Job doesn't do that. He just says, okay, you've taken everything from me, but I still praise you. And that's the confusing part.
Well, it's also interesting that God didn't take his wife.
I know. That's because the wife was there to be more like Satan.
First gotta die.
Well, it crossed my mind also that often, I mean, the traditional view in biblical is that wives, children, property are all the same. It's all property. So maybe part of the point is for their time that everything can be replaced. Now, for our time, I'm not sure that works. I hate to lose my two daughters with the guarantee that they could be replaced because they can't. So, but it's a different time too, that we have to understand. So back in the throne room, Satan is saying he's roaming throughout the earth, back and forth, back and forth. He really does seem like a troublemaker, just for trouble. So, and God throws down the gauntlet again, says, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him. He's blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil, and he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any. And the thing we need to keep in mind in this narrative is that God knows that, Satan knows that, Job doesn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Any comment on those verses?
I do notice several times in this story that the word integrity comes up, which I really like that description of Job. He never loses it.
What he believes, he believes. Okay. And the rest of that is skin for skin. Satan replied, a man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones. He will surely curse you to your face. What do you think that skin for skin means?
Eye for an eye. Tooth for tooth.
Yeah.
Eye for an eye. Do we have most of these? I guess they're not Hebrew, so I don't.
Well, up until that point, God had allowed the Satan to take what Job had in terms of property, family. You know, now he's saying you can strike him personally with afflictions, see what happens.
But you can't kill him.
Don't kill him.
Don't let him suffer.
That was my exact thought. Let him suffer, but don't kill him. So, Satan goes out of the presence of the Lord and afflicts Job with painful sores on his feet and on his head. What does that next line mean? Okay. Why is he sitting among the ashes?
When they mourn, they sometimes would pour ashes on.
Okay.
I don't know why he's sitting in them, but maybe that has to do with a grieving.
Well, if his house had burnt down, that would be one thing. There'd be ashes, but it hasn't. Nothing to go of. As an allusion to something else. What do you think it's an allusion?
Isn't there something about fire being purifying?
That's true. But these are ashes after the fire.
I think sometimes ashes are used in medicinal purpose to help cure.
You're all being too kind. Basically, commentaries I've read basically say that this is an allusion to the fact that he is out among the homeless. He's lost everything and now living among the homeless, and because he's got sores all over his body. I mean, you can consider him like a leper.
Yeah.
He's being ostracized, and he's lost it all. And his wife comes along and in a very kind way says, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." So to her, it's better for him to die than to continue to suffer. And he calls her a foolish woman, which one version of the Bible says Hebrew basically morally deficient. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? And in all this, Job did not sin in what he said. Reactions?
I wonder if he's thinking at this point, oh, so you're the reason God's punishment. Like, you're so foolish. Why are you tempting me yourself? Like, you're the reason.
Well, and it says, in all this, does it say the same thing in yours? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. So was he thinking?
Yeah.
What did you do to me, God?
Yeah, I've seen some commentators also comment that he may have been thinking some evil thoughts, but he didn't say them. So, again, I don't know how many of you have been in pain for a long period of time. And we'll find out next that Job sits there for his friends come and comfort him supposedly in silence for 7 days. So for 7 days, he's got sores, painful ones from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. So just try to imagine that for a little bit. And he's maybe still in shock, but whatever, he still refuses to condemn God and does not sin what it says.
And I know the friends get kind of a bad rap later in the story, but I really like that they came and sat with him in silence for 7, because that's a friend.
Yeah.
Who just sits there. There's nothing they can do for you. They just sit with you. And in my times of pain, I've appreciated that.
Well, and unfortunately, then they open their mouths.
Then they open their mouths and
So,
try to explain it to him.
yeah. So here are the three friends. Eli Foz, Bildad, and so far. And they've heard all the trouble he's gone through. They come and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. That's how bad the sores had become. They began to weep aloud. They tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads, which is what Paul alluded to. They're in mourning with Job. And they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. And no one said a word. Other comments beyond what we've already said on that passage? After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Anything stick out about this passage?
He's getting frustrated.
Yeah. But he doesn't curse God,
No, he curses in the own birth.
just the day he was born. It's, of course, much of this, I put this more in paragraph form, but much of it's written poetry. Now, 3 verses. May gloom of the darkness frame it once more, the babe is born. May clouds settle upon it, may blackness overwhelm it. That night may thick darkness seize it, may it not be included among the days of the year, nor be entered in any of the months. May that night be barren, may no shout of joy be heard.
Must have happened in February. That's how we lost the date.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, there's a lot of people in the depths of utter despair that wish they'd never been born. That's fairly common. I mean, there's a lot about suicide and things in these days. People just come to that conclusion.
Yeah. Typically, shorten it to say we wish we could go into all the poetic.
Yeah, but when sitting there suffering, your brain starts thinking of all the fun ways to say things.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The good authors do it this
Yeah.
way. You know, I've read plenty of novels that have this much description.
Yes, right.
You just start dreaming of all the good things that you wish would have happened.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do anything.
No, that is why they call these the poetry
Yeah.
books.
And since he is an author, you know, it's kind of taking those suicidal thoughts, giving them purpose instead of just being like, I'm going to turn it in on me. It's like, no, his brain goes to, let's make it pretty, let's make it
Yeah, very,
outside of me.
very vivid.
Yeah.
You know, it's that
Yes.
vivid imagery thing.
It's disconnecting.
True. This is interesting. He further on decides he doesn't even want to condemn the day he was born. He just wants to perish at birth,
Yeah.
Die in the womb, be stillborn. He talks about I would be asleep and at rest with kings and rulers of the earth who built for themselves places now lying in ruins. Princesses who have gold who build their houses with silver. So you think, why wasn't I not hidden away in the ground like a stillborn child? Any comments on that? Why is life given to those in misery and life to the bitter soul, for those who long for death and does not come, who search for it more than for hidden treasure? And he's basically asking a question that many people who suffer with long-term illnesses ask. You know, why can't death take me? Why can't I just go?
That are the very old.
Yeah.
Well,
Very
I was gonna say, when my dad was, quite often he was afraid God had forgotten. he was just gonna leave him here forever.
And partly, this is a literary tool that the author of Job is inviting the reader into the magnitude of Job's suffering.
Yeah.
You know, why couldn't in one paragraph say, okay, Job suffered, he lost everything. But we're on chapter 3 now, and it just keeps coming, and now the despair and everything. I think the author wants the reader to share in that sense of how bad things were. That's, like I said, it's a literary tool. It's kind of like the Marvel movie. How bad a thing's going to get. It's always worse before it gets better.
Well, the book, Les Miserables, you read it, and by the time you get through one of the chapters, you're feeling very miserable. And he did exactly that. It's like, you can stop now.
That's a big
It's a
book.
book, big book.
Yep, 700 and some pages.
But there's a chapter that just goes on and on and on. I'm like, I get it already. You can stop now.
Well, and it's a little like Jane, others have talked about is, you know, you don't, in any novel, don't really get a full sense of it if you simply say, and Job was afflicted with sores, and he didn't curse God. I mean, that doesn't give you the impact of going through every line here and understanding what he felt. So
I like that, for sighing has become my daily food. My groans pour out like water.
yeah, very, very poetic, very literal. But it's also interesting that what I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. It's almost like, even with the fear of the Lord, which is that retribution theology, he always, in the back of his mind, prayed that God was going to come and take away what he had. I think we would probably all agree that's not the way God wants us to live. Fear of what might be coming next. Says, I have no peace, no quietness, I have no rest, but
You think he felt that before all these inflictions came on him? When he was living the high life and everything?
well, I wonder. I suspect
I
he
mean,
did.
I can see it once he starts having that. He's like, okay, what's around the next corner? But when he was living, and that good, I mean,
Well, he certainly was fearful of what would happen to the sons and daughters
yeah.
because he was offering the burnt offerings every time they had a party because he was afraid of what they might do.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of fear there, quite different than our New Testament, vision of God. So I suspect he did. I think that was probably why he was as faithful as he was, because there was a certain amount of fear.
I do think there is some truth to one of the things that Satan says is that he believed Job righteous just because he feared God, just because he wanted the good life. And I do think even today, there are people, who see life in that way, that this is how I get into heaven. This is the rules that I need to follow, and there is that fear that goes with that.
I've probably told this story before, but I can vividly remember when I was baptized, because all my sins were washed away. And there are 4 of us kids and 2 parents. And on the way back from after the church service and all, I was sitting in the middle of the seat, not wanting to touch either of my brothers and sisters, because I was sure that somehow or other I would sin again. And there was a certain fear that I would not be worthy of confirmation and everything else.
Just start all over.
So I think at certain stages of our life, we go through that. How about the next verse here?
Can't read that top line. It always comes out as Eliphaz the termite.
Oh, now I'm gonna only see that.
Well, that's
That's
when I first saw the termite.
It just eats away at you.
Yeah. It's funny because I had the same optical illusion. So
There's the twist.
here's the first time that they started condemning Eliphaz or Eliphaz, whichever way you want to pronounce it, is the first and the primary of the accusers. So tell me what strikes you there? What grabs your attention?
You're my friend. And I want to say something, but I don't want to offend you at the same time, but I'm going to say it.
Yeah. And who can keep them speaking? And this is the part that I think is a warning to all of us, especially those who preach faith and belief and all that sort of thing. But think how you have instructed many, how you strengthened their feeble hands. Your words have supported those who stumbled, and you have strengthened faltering. But now, trouble comes to you, spirit. It strikes you, and you are dismayed. I mean, that's a valid warning for all of us. If we really believe, we believe in the good and the bad. Other comments?
Talking by the contrast that we just read, that Job wished he'd never been born, he wished he was dead, and now along comes Eliphaz and says, guess what, you're upright, so you don't get to die.
Yeah.
The one thing that would bring Job relief, and he can't even have that.
Yeah.
But he also twists that message to say, you know, should not your piety be your confidence, but consider who, being innocent, has ever perished. So he throws it right back at him, you know. So
Well, and that's that again, that retribution theology will pop up all the way through here. That if you're innocent, you won't perish. You know, this will pass. God will bless you again. You just simply have to ask Him.
Well, I can think of plenty of people who are innocent that perish, so I think they're wrong.
I think you probably are in the majority.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about this in light of what's going on in many places in the world. I think about the people in Gaza sitting in the rubble of their homes and their families lost, and I mean, basically they've been treated just like Job has, but it's real. It's not a story. And what's the message from Job that applies to that?
Good question. And they're, in a sense, they're even more so like the children of Job who perish rather than even.
And they had, most of them had no control. They weren't necessarily part of one side or the other. Caught in the crossfire between the two.
Exactly. And he uses this illusion about the lions. It says, as I've observed those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. That's a contrast to 50% of people be destroyed. At the breath of God they perish. At the blast of His anger they are no more. The lions may roar and growl, yet the teeth of the great lions are broken. The lion perishes for lack of prey, and cubs of the lioness scattered. So basically, God will protect or not, depending on for evilness or goodness. And he talks about the word was secretly brought to me. My ears caught a whisper of it. What does that tell you?
I think he discerns something.
Yeah. I've read some commentaries that basically say that he thinks he's hearing the word of God, but he's not. That God doesn't necessarily speak as a whisper, which I think we would all disagree with.
yeah,
But at least in this case, it says, brought to me secretly and as a whisper. And we still talk about the still small voice, which can be and is the God. Amid disquieting dreams in the night, when deep sleep falls on people, fear and trembling seized me and made all my bones shake, which is again the fact that many folks then and now believe that God speaks to the dream. So a spirit glided past my face, hair on my body stood on end. Stopped where I could not tell what it was. Form stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? And I'm not sure Job was even claiming to be more righteous than God. But his friend is throwing that in his face. Other comments on this passage?
Well, isn't it interesting that here we are talking about a man that thinks he hears the voice of God, and he's wrong. And that's exactly what we studied in our last book. First 300 years of Christianity was everybody trying to figure out what God was saying in those early books. So it's always about man trying to figure out what God is trying to tell him, and we're kind of 50-50 shot at getting it right, in my opinion. So, I mean, it took the whole story, 4 different guys try to interpret this event to Job, including this young guy that comes along and has the answers, and he's wrong too, until God finally says, no, I am beyond your understanding.
Yeah.
What version of the Bible are you using?
New International Version.
Okay, because
IB.
mine is a little bit different.
Okay.
It says, can mortals be righteous? God? And can humans be pure before their maker? It doesn't say more.
Interesting.
You say, can humans be?
What version are you?
That NRSV updated edition.
Well, once again,
Man,
we have people interpreting the same scripture differently.
Differently.
yeah.
Even translating it differently.
Maybe that's the Satan's fault. So I'll give them 100 different versions of the Bible, they'll never figure it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's about time to stop there. We'll continue this next Sunday. We'll go through a few more. I wanted to get through, which I did obviously, the first cycle of debates where the 3 friends talked to Job. But then I also want to get into discussing this article all shared about some of the correlation between the Wizard of Oz and the Bill. So we'll try to get all that done next time. We're not going to be able to go through line by line every one, but I figured if we got through this first cycle, it'd give us a sense of the arguments all the way. So we'll resume next Sunday. Please read it. Please read the whole book.
How do we, I guess I want to try to figure out for teaching purposes how we want to continue approaching this. Are we going to continue to go line by line through Job, or are we going to go back and forth? Because there's still a lot of material in the book. I mean, the first chapter is very, very long.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of looking ahead,
Well,
future teaching. and what we
He
need
speaks in, and our author, this, I don't know, you read too much, so there's another one.
Yeah, I know.
But our author kind of goes in terms of themes. So, I like, the important, you pick out the important verses in terms of what you want to teach, but I also like the idea of themes. So I don't know how you do it.
I guess that was my question. Do we want to just finish the book of Job first and get that information, in front of everybody, and then come back to the chapter? Or?
I think that each of the teachers should listen to Whisper and
The whisper of the night.
Oh, no. And we got a 50 shot.
And I know that I'm going to do at least one more Sunday on Job, and beyond that.
So I mean, we got
God bless
4
you.
chapters today, right? And there's 42 chapters in Job or something like that. So
I don't know that we have to go through verse by verse, but even if we do what I plan to do next Sunday, there still could be some discussion on God's response at the end,
Yeah.
Job's final argument, and so that could be at least one more Sunday.
The bulk of Job is these
Yes.
debate things, so you can squeeze that all in. So that's going to be like 30 chapters of Job or something. That's a lot.
I'm not promising
The
anything.
the debate is just a bunch of lawyers
I was
sitting
gonna say, these
around.
two guys must be lawyers.
Oh my gosh! Stop talking. You know,
Eliphaz, the attorney.
yeah, it feels like that. Do we? I mean, even I am like, do we have to debate it to that nth degree?
These are lawyers or they're allies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, honestly, I do see a bit similarities between, that's what the Jewish faith did.
Yeah, I mean, the lawyers and the Pharisees were kind of one and the same.
Yeah.
Back then, so.
Since we don't have the book, and you keep mentioning that the author goes by themes, could
Yeah.
you give us a list of the themes?
Well, I did last week.
Well, and
That was
and
what I
he
did.
will, because
Well, I mean,
he categorizes.
so we could refer
Oh, you
back
want
to
us to? Oh, that's not a bad idea.
Well, he takes Psalms, categorizes that. So I mean, those will come out when we
Yeah.
talk about that.
Maybe
And-
give them an outline though. I can
Well,
work on an outline
we're gonna-
if you want to.
We will get back to the themes in this one too.
All right.
So I know Jane talked about them last week. I'm going
It's
to read
it's a
this.
very academic approach to these books. I think most people would probably get a little bored by some of it.
Well, I
But-
just-
but I- so I'm-
if we
that's
know
why
what
I'm
the
asking.
themes are, then we can kind of.
class.
I'm just
relate
asking
back to
the
it.
other instructors how they're gonna deal with that, because my
Yeah.
thought was, we're gonna have to hone this down to the key points and summarize it a little bit,
Right.
let the class talk about it, rather than go through line by line everything that the author says.
Right.
But yeah, we could make a list of themes and broad areas of discussion.
Dennis, you had
Are there cliff notes?
I haven't
Somebody's
checked. I
gotta
probably
make 'em.
should have. I should have.
That's not a bad idea. I mean, maybe as each teacher creates our PowerPoint, we can take it and give them like, you want it before class or you want it after?
Well, just a list of what the themes are, so we can kind of have that to refer to and understand what you're heading for. I don't know.
Well,
We think
Just a
John-
Okay,
suggestion.
what I'm thinking is, heaven help us all. I'm thinking that it's so much work just to get this put together. I don't know. I have a slide later on that talks about the themes, and we will revisit that. Since I finish this up usually like Sunday morning at 7 a.m.,
Hey.
I'm not sure I can get something to you early.
I understand
But
that.
we'll give you as much as we can on screen.
Well, let's do this. I still have my PowerPoint presentation that had, because the first 30 pages of our chapter is him talking about the themes.
Right.
So why don't I go back to that and I'll create a little piece of paper of themes. And then the other teachers, the book comes back to them.
Right.
So I'll just go ahead and create
Okay.
that for everybody, bring it next week.
My
I
hope
just
is that
think it'd be
people will
helpful.
actually go through
That's a good
and read the book, because I think the themes will jump out at you.
Yeah, we're trying to throw the themes out, because he does go, in this chapter, he goes through just exactly like what Jonathan is doing, I mean, let's talk about verses 1 through 5. So he's trying to condense for you what he's saying about
Trying to
those
feed
verses.
back to you what
Yeah.
the author is.
Yeah,
And it
But it
will
is
become
frustrating if you
repetitious at
haven't
a
read
certain
it.
point, so. Okay,
How can you say it's condensed when his book is 3 times as long as the book of Job is itself?
no, Jonathan's trying to condense it, is what I meant.
yeah, I'm trying to condense it.
But yeah, you're right,
But-
it's a big book.
Again, my plan was to try to go through the first cycle of debates, and then hopefully lead you, the next person, to deal with the very end of the chapter,
I don't think
It talks about Job's final arguments and God's response. We'll see.
Dennis will wrap it up.
We want everybody to have a sense of the punishment that Joe.
Yes,
I
yes.
think you're going to give that to us.
Yes, the suffering, we all must suffer.
We'll all suffer together.
The book, The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco, was made into a movie.
Oh, it was a
with Sean-
movie.
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
It's a very lengthy murder mystery that takes place in a medieval monastery. And I think it won the Nobel Prize for Literature or something. He won some high prize for it, for writing it. But the first 150 pages, they said was some of the most boring prose that was ever written. And they asked the author why he did that, and said that living in an ancient monastery, your life was so rigidly controlled and there was vows of silence and all this stuff. He said it's the most boring thing you could imagine. He said, I wanted to bring the reader into that and have a sense of how monotonous life in a monastery was. And so if you got through the first 150 pages and stayed with the book, then you got to the exciting murder mystery part. And I thought, well, that's pretty creative writing there to force the reader to experience that with you.
Yeah.
That's what this is, too.
That's what this is, yeah.
That is. Okay, well,
And Les Mis.
thank you.
and Les
folks.
Mis.
Les Mis.